what follows up there, I have no idea. I'll follow it with some interest. But the point I'm making is there you saw what the power of people who unite around a platform of change, who insist that the wrong must be dismantled, and that the people have a right to expect from their governments the well-being and the welfare of all the people. That has been an enormous power. I hope we here at CSUN see that enormous power and understand that that power was called by Gandhi and by Martin Luther King Jr. and by a host of other people in the 20th century, non-violent power. The power of soul force. The power, as Gene Sharp has put it, the politics of nonviolent action. And so building upon that, I want to say to you that our situation has great possibilities for us if we're willing to use it. A part of what you are fighting now, and we are fighting in California in all this business of public education, is, in my mind, quite simple. The decision on the part of what I like to call plantation capitalism to make public education, both K-12 and higher education, a for-profit enterprise governed by what they think to be the free market, which is one of the great lies that is told in the United States. That's what the Chamber of Commerce has put together across the nation, a huge budget to do. Budgets that are raised not by the small businesses who are parts of the Chamber of Commerce, but the big institutions in capitalism that want domination and control. I say this quite deliberately and intentionally. I think it's cowardliness on the part of the males who make many of these decisions, whether in political parties or economic institutions, or even in higher education in California. I think it's cowardly to pretend that we have a financial crisis and then to make students pay for that financial crisis, instead of straightening out the issues themselves, as they know full well can be corrected. I think that's cowardly. So that part of the issue we have to somehow face is the fact that we have people in places of power who are cowardly and lack the character to have a vision about we the people, about our society, and about the possibilities, the unlimited possibilities of our young. It is my thesis that education from K-12 through many levels of higher education ought to come from the public dollar and ought to be available to give this nation of ours, California, the finest educational system that any human being, any group of human beings can afford. Now, this was a part of the attraction of California in the 50s and 60s. I don't know if people even want to remember that. What they're doing now is, and what we must fight, is developing a school system, developing higher education, where Jackie Robinson could not go to school as he did at UCLA 30, 40 years ago and graduated. Where Tom Bradley, a graduate of UCLA, mayor of this city of Los Angeles for some 20 years, cannot go today. They both came out of sharecroppers' families. They were both among the first members of their families to be able to afford an education, and to afford it because public education at that time had not the goal of profit or privatization, not the goal of being for profit, but the goal of helping children and young people become effective and competent human beings for the many, 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 many roles that we human beings must play in the United States and around the world. So I think the demands must call for a different vision of education. And what I see in part missing from the demands of the Students for Quality Education is the whole business and civil resistance of engendering another kind of power grid that can change the present power structures, both in the CSUN system and the UC system and in the state of California. I don't know if I make that clear. A part of nonviolent struggle as Gandhi developed it was to say that people had power. They had life power. And that if they bent their power in conjunction with others, not just their family, but beyond their families into the hundreds and the thousands and the tens of thousands and the millions, as Egypt this past winter, Gandhi insisted that that power of the people would forge a new power relationship in their society, a power relationship that's not there at the present moment, that would then reshape the power grid. I don't know if that's a better way of explaining it. But nonviolence is not passivity. It is not passive resistance. Nonviolence is not pacifism. Nonviolence is not being apathetic. Nonviolence means engendering power in such a fashion with the people, of the people, in a fashion that creates a new power equation that the status quo cannot ignore or avoid. That's civil resistance. That's nonviolent resistance. So what I want to try to propose in wrapping this up quite briefly is to say to you that this scene can be reversed probably in 5 to 10 years if we want to do it. But it will require students and faculty working together over a 5-10 year period, providing structure and continuity to make that happen. But it would also require students and faculty not to limit the struggle to the university, but to include their families, and their families to include other families, to include other civic organizations, so that we mobilize a civic society that the banks or the Chancellor Reed cannot avoid. You have very good demands. The second thing about what I want to say in this power grid is that a part of the crisis is due to our bad, immoral, cowardly political parties and political leaders. And I make no hesitation about saying that. Our political parties have fallen down on any kind of responsibility to the 310 million people or the 40 million people in the state of California. They simply do not know us, and for whatever reasons that they're elected officials for the most part, and I do not mean all of them, because I'm quietly having some meetings with some political elected officials about some matters. So I'm not trying to denigrate all, but in a general fashion, the political parties are irresponsible. So I wonder, for example, in your plan, Students for Quality Education, California Faculty Association, I wonder if you plan, if there ought to be some direct actions aimed at the political parties. Not just the legislatures, but at the parties themselves, at the presidents of the parties in California. I wonder if there ought to be some actions planned that go after the kind of extremism that some in the Republican Party and some in the Democratic Party represent. To pretend that we can have a quality of life without a fair, decent, meaningful taxation system or systems is, of course, a lie. And I resent the fact that in the front page of the Los Angeles Times a few days ago, in a major article, it was described how General Electric paid no taxes on their highest profits in 2010, and that they had a whole tax lawyer apparatus that has perfected the gift of making certain that the corporation pays no taxes. FedEx paid no taxes in the year 2010. Many corporations. This is well documented. It's available through scholars who've worked on it, through academics who've written the books and the papers. Well documented. We cannot have political parties who play games about the necessity of our caring for our infrastructure, caring for our roads, but especially for our schools and our colleges and universities. So what about a direct action plan that goes after other units in our society that use their power in such an immoral fashion? And then about the last word I want to say is that this can be reversed and changed, not tonight, but in 5 to 10 years it could be systematically reversed. If you develop a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, a serious plan, these goals represent certainly a real beginning. But how do you break these goals down into what we're going to do at CSUN? How do we get the California Faculty Association to come onto the side, verbally and by action, quality education at CSUN and in the Cal State system for all students, and to stop the hemorrhaging of students because of tuition costs and all and fees, that cutting out the Jackie Robinsons and the Tom Bradleys and the Cesar Chavez's across our state. A plan that has strategy in it, that uses mixed action, that develops a lot of people who become powerful spokespeople for this quality education and for what it will take, which develops maybe tens of thousands of people like yourselves and others in every system who become extraordinary voices, informed, courageous, with character, that become a part of